It's the Morning Brew with Elle Dawson and Gillian Robertson. Brought to you by Fight Bananas.
Good morning, everybody. We are live on Sunday morning. It is Super Bowl Sunday, so I have my Team Jesus jersey on today. And we just had an amazing card, UFC 312. I got to be completely honest. I was hating on this card. A lot of us were. And I think I was proven wrong. It absolutely delivered. Your thoughts, G?
Oh, yeah, I definitely think it delivered more than most expected. I feel like I've heard a lot of people talking bad about the card coming up. But I think, yeah, a lot of fights definitely delivered. Started off with a 19-second knockout, and it's hard to argue with that, you know? I think every single fight not every single, most of the fights from top to bottom were lived up to it was a good fight night.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I was hating. Good morning, Christopher J. Hello. I feel like I always forget to actually introduce us, but it doesn't matter. You guys know who we are by now. If you're watching the Sunday Morning Brew, I'm just like, hey, we're here. I agree. I actually want to ask you about that first fight of the night, because I felt the stoppage may have been a little fast, and I noticed that throughout the rest of the night, the refs were absolutely making sure that they let guys fight out of bad positions. I didn't pay attention to whether or not that ref was working the rest of the night or not, but it definitely seemed to be a change of pace after that first fight. Did you think it was early?
I think it's questionable, honestly. I don't hate the stoppage, but I don't love it either. I think from certain angles, the way that right hand hit and he hit the mat looked very bad.
I agree.
And I almost think that he went out, the mat woke him up, and he started wrestling. And because even like after the refs pulling him off, he's continuing to wrestle. So that's my thought, is he doesn't even know where he's at. He's just wrestling out of instinct at this point. So I'm like, I think it was a good stoppage, but it also just looked bad because it looked like he was continuing to fight too.
I agree. And I kind of wonder if it would have been one of those stoppages where it ended up being a good stoppage, but he might have been able to continue to fight at the same time. Because I agree with you. He was definitely out of it enough that he was still trying to take Quillen down, even while the ref was pulling him from behind. So it's, it was a weird one for sure. But I felt like after that fight, maybe they had everybody in the back and was like, hey, these are great fights. Make sure you let them go. Because after that, we saw people get dropped pretty badly in a handful of fights and come back and keep fighting, and in some cases win. Fight of the night, Cody Steele versus Rong Zhu was just unbelievable.
Honestly, that's a matchup that kind of surprised me. I'm like, why are you putting these two young prospects against each other for like Cody Steele's debut? Rong Zhu's like hasn't been in the UFC that long. I'm like, build up their careers a little bit, then make them fight each other. But yeah. That being said, an absolutely amazing fight, like from both guys. Cody Steele just showing true durability. Rong Zhu showing just all around, like prepared for anything. At 24 years old, I think they said he had something like 30-something fights. It's just absolutely insane.
Well, and Rong Zhu's another guy, we were talking off air, but he's another guy that used to train at ATT, and I didn't realize how young he was while he was at ATT, because that was like when Grant and I first moved to Florida. That was like 2 years ago. And that was his first stint in the UFC that didn't go as well, obviously. And he's recently been re-signed. But the fact that he's been in the UFC, out of the UFC, and back in by the age of 24 is kind of nuts. And I wonder if he, maybe he just got in a little bit too soon that first time around.
Okay, well, and he was a baby the first time around, literally. And he still is. He's so young, and with that much experience under your belt, it really made me a fan of him last night. I'm really excited to see his next fights, what he has coming for him.
A lot of young guys on this card too. Like we were talking off air about Francisco Prado and how much talent he has at 22 years old. Like out here fighting Jake Matthews to a decision, a guy who's been in the UFC for, they said, 11 years last night.
Yeah, every single one of his fights has been an absolute dogfight. I think last two of his fights, he's gotten fight of the night or performance of the night. He's a 50K fighter. He's 22 years old, and the UFC just keeps feeding him to the dogs, really.
I mean, what would you prefer to see for Francisco Prado next? Because I agree with you. I feel like he's had some crazy tough matchups. I'm not sure how I feel about him. We were talking about this, like this. Maybe he had this big cut to lightweight, but he did look a little bit undersized with Matthews. Do you keep him at welterweight? Do you have a matchup in mind for him? Do you send him back down to lightweight? What do you do with Francisco Prado if you're the UFC?
I think guys at that weight class are in such a weird position for like the 55 to 70. It's like it's such a big jump. So it's like maybe he just can't make 55, but he is too small for 70. So I don't know. It's a hard position that they're in, really. What's next? I really hope they just give him a favorable matchup for him. I don't give him like something easy, but just give him something that's more favorable, something that's like literally Jake Matthews had double his experience. Like it gives something like make their records a little bit more even, just make it a more even fight for Francisco because he deserves it. He is a prodigy and like he deserves to be able to show that.
100%. Like just the level of toughness, the level of grit, the takedown defense against a guy like Matthews, who's just been in there with everybody, was crazy to see. Like I'm sad he didn't get 50K because I got to admit though, I feel like Cody Steele and Rong Zhu, like they 100% deserved fight of the night. I would not have been upset if they had given out 2 fight of the night bonuses, like to 2 different fights. Wouldn't have been mad at all. What a card.
Oh yeah, especially those 2 fights. And like I said, both of them, I'm surprised the UFC is making these matches. Like it just blows my mind that they're not taking guys like Rong Zhu, Cody Steele, Francisco, and trying to build the names, They're all young guys who are prospects. Like, why wouldn't you try to build them up a little bit,
I kind of wonder if the UFC just isn't doing that right now. Like we saw kind of this early era of Contender Series fighters. Grant was on season 1, and then you had early seasons. You had Sean O'Malley, you had Jamal Hill, and they really did develop these guys. And I wonder if now there's just so many good young guys. Like the sport has evolved so much over the last 5 to 7 years. It's almost like they're like, oh, you sink or swim. Like we've got so many young prospects. Like we'll just see who survives the onslaught.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yes, but I'm also like, I just feel like they had a stronger, I guess, a higher threshold at which they let people in after the Contender Series. Like you said, earlier Contender Series, you saw people like Grant, you saw people like Sean O'Malley, you saw Macy Barbers, you saw Jamal Hills, who all have become top 10 fighters at this point, where I'm like, I don't feel like the new generation of Contender Series, I've been seeing that as much. And so I'm like, I'm surprised that they're matching these kids who are the big names up against each other when they just signed a bunch of people that I wouldn't necessarily consider like there would be better matchups for Cody Steele or, like to build them up a little bit more. And just last Contender Series, I feel like Dana was just giving away contracts. It was too easy.
Yeah. We have 5 fights on a card and 7 people got contracts. Like it's and I remember for the first season, like Grant's season, it's pretty much 1 contract a night, maybe. Mm-hmm. Like it was not everybody was getting signed. And yeah, now they're giving out 5, maybe more contracts on almost every episode. So I agree. And I think especially those middle weight classes, like 45 to 170 are already so incredibly saturated. You already have, especially at lightweight, you have so many guys that want to be more active, but can't because there's so many fights. There's so many fighters and they all need to fight.
Yeah.
It's wild.
There was one fight, I will say, I was looking forward to it last night and I feel like it let me down a little bit, was Wang Kong and Bruno Brazil.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
I like after Bruno's last performance against Molly McCann, I was like, wow, she looks like a different she was at 115 then. I believe she took this fight on short notice and so she took it at 125. But I was like, oh, this is another player in the game I have to watch. When I watched her last fight, I was like, she looked good. And I honestly put it to the fighting nerds. I was like, they prepared her with a good game plan. She came in and was ready for Molly. Where this fight, it just looked like she didn't even want to be in there. And then Wayne Kong, too, had a broken opponent and was just standing in front of her doing nothing. I'm like, both girls, I just feel like didn't live up to it for me last night. It kind of let me down.
No, I'm with you there. I was expecting a lot more spark in that fight too. I will say this, I think it happens where you have two fighters that do have a lot of power, sometimes makes for a boring fight, Cue
Yeah.
Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou. Like the threat is higher, and so they tend to be a little bit more reserved. But I expected Wang Kong to really get after it once it was very clear Brazil just wasn't really fighting back. And I agree with you. I don't think she really went for the finish at any point.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like that one made for a boring fight. And right after that, there's another one that was Jenkins versus Santos too. I'm like those two kind of let me down, where I was just like,
really?
I felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I just feel like there wasn't much done. I don't know. I'm a big proponent of, I hate grapplers who just like hold position. I feel like you need to be doing damage, you need to be working, and I just felt like I saw a lot of that in that fight.
Yeah, no, I kind of get what you're saying. I felt like it was fun. Like the scrambles were fun, and I know Jenkins, he's such a explosive guy. I can see Santos being like just needing to really maintain position to not lose position. He didn't do a ton of damage on top. I was happy with the fight, to be completely honest. I really enjoyed it. I 100% agree with Christian's comment here. I feel like Santos is like a mini Charles. He looks like him off his back. He looks like him on the feet. So I really enjoyed watching them fight. And I think very highly of Jack Jenkins too. So I feel like it was just such a big win for Gabriel Santos. I'd love to see him. I love watching him fight, but I see a lot of Charles in him, which excites me, for this.
For me, it just looked like once Jack was on the ground, he looked like he didn't know what to do. And I'm just like, as Santos, I just feel like it's like the Bruno Brazil and Wayne Kong thing. You should be doing work. You should be capitalizing. You should be doing more, like where Jack Jenkins kind of just looked like he didn't really have much options from there. I feel like I would like to see more from Santos.
Yeah, no. And we definitely have a lot of questions for you when it comes to defense from bottom once we get to the co-main event to talk about that for sure, because I was very shocked to watch that fight. But I see what you're saying. Like if somebody's not trying to get up and you don't have to work super hard to hold them down in that moment, that's the time to do damage. You know who was doing a really good job of that was actually Jimmy Crute. Watching that fight,
For one round. For one round.
the one round that he wasn't getting kind of hooked up. But when he was on top, like you would see Rodolfo Bellato like try to sweep, and Jimmy Crute would do just enough to avoid the sweep and then make him pay, like big elbow, big overhand, like 3 shots. And I was really loved that style in that round. That was an interesting fight. I don't disagree with the draw. I still think draws shouldn't even be a possibility. I think we need to have a winner and a loser. And technically speaking, like if it's a majority draw, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that, because the judge who did have it 29-27, that would have been for Jimmy Crute, because it would have been the 10-8 in the first, and then he probably gave him the second, right? So technically, wouldn't he win? If 2 judges see it a draw and 1 judge says he won, shouldn't it be the deciding factor? Shouldn't we just not have draws?
I agree with you. I feel like in every single fight, one person did more. Like
Yes.
You can watch a fight and like whether it can be very close, but you can be like, okay, this guy did more. This guy did more. No matter what, I don't think there should be a draw. That fight, honestly, me and my boyfriend were talking about it the whole time, where we're like, Jimmy Crute looked great in the first round. We were super impressed. And then second and third round, they're like, oh, this is why he's on a 3-fight losing streak, because it's like he looked like phenomenal for 1 round, and then after that it just went downhill fast.
Well, and if we think about it, how do you get on top? Rodolfo's failed lat drop, right? It wasn't Jimmy Crute initiating the takedown. And honestly, like he had some decent shots, and I felt like if he had just stayed on the leg, and like he gets too extended, he gets super extended, you know. And then when like Rodolfo would like spin out, I feel like if Jimmy Crute would re-wrestle off of his initial shot a little bit more, I think he could have gotten the takedown. But it seemed to be like, oh, I take one shot, oh, I didn't get it, and then I don't shoot again for. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm shooting repeatedly for the full 5 minutes. I don't care if I get 0 shots.
Especially after that first round, I'm like, I feel like you have to. Like, you're able to be so dominant. Like, just go Marab on him, you know?
Yeah,
60 shots a round.
Like, that should be your plan, 100%. Like, if you know this guy couldn't get up from under me for almost the entire round, he got up for like the last, 45 seconds? Like, you gotta commit to that. I agree 100%. Heck yeah. We need to go to the comments. I've been so bad about this on the Sunday morning show. We got a lot of comments. Gillian going to be the first person to submit Marina Rodriguez. Let's go.
Not arguing with that.
Oh, I do want to talk about this. Did you see the Australian media outlet their article on Sean Strickland?
Yes.
And then the UFC shared it without any context.
Dana White was the first one who shared it on his story, saying, someone knocked this man out.
Dude, and I don't know if you had the pleasure of reading the comments. The Australians hate that news outlet. Like, they were just trashing on that entire article. All the Australian fans were like, no, we really like Sean Strickland. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. But so Christopher J said, how about Dana White calling the Australian media a bunch of pussies at the post-fight press conference? I mean, it sounds like the Australian fans agreed. So
I've seen a bunch of videos too this week of Sean Strickland. He was like out on a dock, like with a bunch of the Australians just like having fun. They were wrestling and like fighting each other into the water and things like that. Like, he's just been like one of the locals all week long. And I'm like, they love him. Absolutely. So I'm like, I think it is, I don't know, just the media.
I actually lived in Australia for like 8 months in college. I studied abroad there. Yeah. I can't imagine Australians not loving Sean Strickland. Like, he fits right in personality wise, 100%. Australia is one of the chillest, most fun places I have ever been. Easy shmoney for Gillian by submission. Let's go. We got a lot of people ready to play some bets on G in a few weeks.
I'll be taking percentages.
There's a commission.
Exactly.
Bad. Christian agreed with me. Oh yeah, we already hit this comment. Zhang turned Tatiana into a baby. We will get to the co-main and the main event. Dricus turned Shot into a baby. Damon's out here for blood today in the comments section. If Sean Strickland fought like he talks, he'd be undefeated. I'm glad. I usually don't love watching DDP fight. I will be completely honest about that. And I've never loved watching Sean Strickland fight. It's not super pretty. I'm still going to tune in, and it's not like he's my least favorite fighter to watch, but it's a very unique style, and it's very awkward, and it sometimes produces a lot of like stalling positions. DDP looks like the cleanest and the smoothest I've ever seen him. Like, I don't know what happened to DDP, but he became way more technical in this matchup against Sean. So I was super impressed with him. I thought he looked like the cleaner fighter. And usually that's not how DDP fights. So technical DDP might be a new unlocked character.
Did you happen to see Yuri's post about the he may disagree with you.
I was like, I don't know if I agree. He was looking pretty sharp.
It's like, no technique, no rhythm, but 200% activity and pressure. I'm like, I think that's an insult from anybody but Yuri.
Honestly, I wish I had the video saved. Gillian and I were sending each other posts of Yuri like sticking his hand into fire ant hills to build his pain tolerance. And we're like, dude, Yuri will do anything but train for fights. Like,
I just want to see that man in a gym once, ever, just once.
He's like up in the mountains, sticking his hand in fire ant hills. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's happening here, but Fury is a character. Tai Tuivasa looks like he's been eating good lately. Dude, what's his name? Taliesin. Teixeira is his last name. What a debut.
No, Teixeira, honestly, and like,
I'm sorry. You said Tai Tuivasa, not Justin Taffa. My brain saw those as two different. Sorry. Carry on. Taliesin is who we're talking about now.
Honestly, heavyweight fights, I'm always going into them scared because they can go one of two ways. They either finish in the first round or you're there for 3 rounds and it's a long fight. So I'm like, especially once it starts getting late at night, we had a light heavyweight fight that didn't go the best, and then followed by a heavyweight fight. I was like, oh, I'm going to be falling asleep. I'm like, this is terrible. I just want to make it to the co-main event. And it finished in like 30 seconds. I'm like, thank you to Shara so much for allowing me to watch the co-main event because I would have passed out otherwise. It was a beautiful performance. He just goes out there and like, I feel like takes what he wants, honestly. Went out there and just dominated. And it's what you saw in the Contender Series from him too. And he seems to be like, I don't know, a pretty scary man in that division right now.
Dude, Taliesin Teixeira is what Stefan Struve should have been. Like, that athleticism at that height is scary. Like, and I'm here for it. I think we were talking about this on Tuesday, how important it is for Jones to fight Tom Aspinall because it gives us an opportunity for a new heavyweight superstar when Jones retires. Without that fight, I just feel like there's so little for Aspinall in the division right now. We could be seeing some fun future matchups coming from Taliesin Teixeira. So I'm here for it. I am here for it.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think that would be a good matchup in the future. And then next we had, like I said, I waited until the co-main event, and then that's when I fell asleep right afterwards. I'm like, I watched the main event this morning, but the co-main event.
I cannot believe I let you and Dave talk me out of my confidence in Zhang Weili. I was so upset that I didn't stick with my gut, but dude, how good is she?
I don't know if I watched that fight as being impressed by Weili or just being unimpressed by Tatiana. I really think it was Tatiana just looking terrible more than Weili looking good.
I think there were a couple things at play. I feel like Tatiana Suarez was not expecting to be underneath Weili at all. I bet she probably doesn't get taken down a whole lot in her gym. And I feel like it showed by not having a good game plan to get up. And we've seen Weili, she's always great on top. We saw it with Yan Xiaonan, Amanda Lemos. Like, she can out-wrestle high-level girls for sure. But even those girls, like, a lot of them were making good decisions to get up. And we saw Tatiana just continuously go for this half butterfly. I'm going to go double over the arms. I'm going to try and like sweep you over top. And it wasn't working. And I feel like that was she just kept going to that, or eventually was just holding her, trying to mitigate damage. And I was really surprised to see that from a high level wrestler like Tatiana.
I may be wrong in saying this, but some part of me thinks that she underestimated Weili and was surprised that she made it out of the first round. Because I'm like, it almost looked like Tatiana went into the second round just like almost
already defeated.
Yeah, like broken. Like she was like, fuck, she's still here. Like, she's still in front of me. And I don't know. I really think there might have been some part of that. She was definitely, obviously, that huge gash on her knee. I'm like,
that was nasty.
That was disgusting. But it was obviously messing with her mentally too, because she kept on asking, she wouldn't even look at it. She kept on asking her coaches, is it that bad? How does it look? I'm like, I feel like she was definitely out of there mentally. And it showed in the fight. Maybe it's just me being a little bit too cocky, a little bit too confident. I don't think that I saw anything really impressive from Weili on the ground either. Tatiana really let me down. I'm like, I feel like she doesn't, like you said, she doesn't have any options off her back. She doesn't know how to fight off her back in general. Even her shots were from 10 miles away. I'm like, just falling into them. I'm like I said, I really think it was more Tatiana didn't show up or just looked terrible, rather than like I'm praising, like Whaley did her job. She looked great, but I don't think it's necessarily like, how good is Whaley? I think Tatiana looked terrible.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I don't think it was like Tatiana necessarily having an off night. I just don't think she was ready for this moment.
Yeah.
Like I remember like looking back after it, like hindsight is of course 2020. But when I was originally looking at this matchup before I fell victim to Dave and Gillian talking me out of my picks, I looked at just her fights previously. Jessica Andrade is a wonderful win. No hate on Jessica Andrade whatsoever. However, she isn't at her like peak form Jessica Andrade anymore. She's older. She's had a lot of damage. Like she's been through some serious wars, and she's towards the end of her career. And if we look at the last 2 years for both of them, like Tatiana, like she didn't beat a Yan Chaonan to get to the title. She didn't beat even a Mackenzie Dern to get to the title. And so it's I just wonder if she didn't have any opportunity. The first time she had an opportunity to see some really heavy adversity in a fight is against Whaley.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say I'm on the opposite end. I think that Whaley feels different because we see a lot of high level girls come into this fight and they don't perform against Whaley like they do against other girls. It's not just Tatiana Suarez. I think she feels different.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's something about the unit that Whaley, our female Bruce Lee that we have now. I think,
like I said, maybe it's just me being cocky because I'm like, I want that belt next year. So I'm like,
go for it.
She ain't shit. But I do think her best weapon is on the feet, and I do think that she has a lot of holes that I can see on the ground.
I like it. And I think you're like, you utilize a lot of pieces in your grappling game that a lot of girls don't, like the way you use your ground and pound. I think that opens up a lot for you and a lot of female fighters just do not utilize that. We see it. Valentina used to do it really well. I feel like she hasn't done as much damage on top recently, but she's also getting older, has to fight a little smarter, But
I also feel like I pose a threat where like Tatiana doesn't off my back. I feel like a lot of girls, it's like, a lot of people in MMA in general so much dismiss jujitsu, like jujitsu doesn't work. But I'm like, most girls, if you watch any of my recent fights, anybody who's taken me down has backed out of my guard to try to get away from me because they're scared to be on top of me. I'm like, whether I'm throwing up submissions, I'm throwing elbows. I'm like, I feel like regardless of where the fight is, I want to be a threat.
Yeah. No, 100%. And like we said, I just did not look like Tatiana had options off of her back. A couple of, there was like one guillotine attempt where we were like, I was like, oh, but I just don't think she had I don't know if it was a mental issue. I don't know if it was the knee. I don't want to say that the knee changed the way the fight would have gone. I don't think it did. It did look really deep though, and really nasty. And I bet that's super sucked. Like, because you grapple in fights, like Grant's like, by round 3, my knees hurt. Like, they hurt, and I can feel them even through the adrenaline because they're so scraped up from the canvas.
Mm-hmm.
Probably felt like shit to be on that knee wrestling. So I'm sure it was there in her mind, but I also think, I think you're right. She looked already like, not already tired, but just defeated after that first round. And I was really surprised because she has a good gas tank, and like normally she does. Like, she looked tired in this fight, but I think you're right. I think it was more of a mental thing than a I'm not in shape thing.
After I seen Paul Felder throw a spinning back fist at somebody with a broken arm, I've stopped being like, oh, maybe that's affecting them in this fight. I'm like, plus Paul Felder's fought with a punctured lung. So I'm like, two things that I'm like, okay, her scratch on her knee, if she can't get over that, then
it's not, yeah, it's a problem if that's what's keeping her from winning that fight, And we've seen Thiago Santos arguably beat John Jones with like no ligaments left in his knee. The dude literally had to replace everything in his knee after that fight. So we've seen it. Like, we definitely see people push through some serious pain and serious injuries. So I do agree.
as you were saying earlier, I guess I didn't really notice as much the level Tatiana has fought. Where until last night, the UFC was like trying to like boost her up and everything. They're like, yeah, after her big wins over Montana De La Rosa and Jessica Andrade, and I'm like, that's when it kind of hit me. I was like,
Yeah.
like Montana is, I believe she's 5-6 or 6-5 in the UFC. You know, like a kind of like even record there where I'm like, she's not in the top 15. You're not fighting a top girl when she's at 25 too. She's not even a 15er. But I'm like, you're not fighting one of the top girls, and then to fight Andrade, the only ranked girl you fought, and now get a title shot. It's like, how did that work? I really do think the UFC though does love Tatiana and has wanted to promote her so desperately since the beginning. They've been trying to give her a spotlight. It's just she hasn't been able to stay healthy the whole time. Like since she's been in the UFC, they've just been like pushing her. Rogan's been pushing her. And then I'm like, I think they just wanted her to have this opportunity, and they just kind of pushed her to it.
I agree. And I think it came too soon because, and it's not even her fault. Like she was on her way up and she was demolishing people. And then she got hurt. Like she just couldn't stay healthy. And then we were supposed to see her fight Verna. I was so excited about that. Like I think Verna can test her wrestling. She's got fantastic grappling. She's crazy cardio. Like I was so excited to see what Tatiana could do in a fight like that. And I feel like if we'd gotten to see that, we would have known more about what this fight would look like. And maybe that would have been her opportunity to see some adversity, but like not as much adversity as she did in the Wei Li fight and come through it. And then she could have leveled up before fighting Wei Li, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But she got hurt. So we didn't get to see those fights. And so I wonder if the UFC is like, dude, I think this is like, she's 34. She hasn't been able to stay healthy. If we're going to get this fight between her and Wei Li, we need to do it now. And I don't know that was the best thing for Tatiana Suarez.
I don't know if it was, but it's also like you said, like maybe it is her only opportunity, honestly. Like maybe who's to say she didn't get injured in this fight? I'm like, it seems very often for her. And I guess on that note, we had a retirement this week with Dominic Cruz too. Similar thing. I'm like, just couldn't stay healthy his whole career, where it's like both, I feel like it's hard to consider them great because of, like with Dominic, I feel like he still is a great, but I'm like, he's just been out so long and like through a lot of his prime, just like not thrown it away, but hasn't been able to use it because of injury after injury after injury. I'm like, is it just how they're made? Should they be doing more like for themselves because for me, I'm like, I was dealing with a lot of injuries before I started going to PT, and I started strengthening my stabilizer muscles versus like just strengthening your regular muscles. So I'm like, I feel like it's like, are they just not taking care of like their bodies right? What's going on where for Dominic, I think it's a little bit how he fights too. I'm like, he's kind of like uses a lot of movement. His knees
just can't handle it.
yeah. His knees can't handle it. But I'm like, what is it that you guys just can't stay in it? Like, and it's not like it's just one thing for like Tatiana. She's had her knees, her shoulder, her neck, her everything.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I will say, like with Dominic Cruz, I feel like we've been going so long. I'm good with it if you're good with it. It's been like 34 minutes. I love it. Let's keep chatting. But I think with Dominic Cruz, like it coming out of retirement the first time, I just don't think was the right call. I agree. I think it was more like, yes, he lost that time when he was in his prime and he tried to make up for it. And sometimes that works. Like, I feel like there are some older guys that didn't fight when they were like 32 to 35. And so they didn't take damage in that time. So now they're like still doing really well at like 38 to 40. But if it's an injury issue, especially with knees, I feel like once you've hurt your knee once, I am a testament to this, 5 knee surgeries deep. Once you've injured your knee once, I feel like it's really hard to like maintain that. And then you're older on top of it. Like cutting weight, I think you're old, everything.
I think, I don't know. I feel like when you do see those I guess, resurgences of people where they're able to get their career back and get that fire again, it's typically the heavier weight classes. You're typically not going to see somebody doing well from 35 to 40 as a 135 or below, as 145 or below, really. I'm like, just because speed is such an advantage at those weight classes where you can't keep that up with age, where you see at heavyweight or light heavy, you'll have a Glover Teixeira champ,
100%. Yeah. There's a reason we don't have many champs over 35 in the core weight classes. Like, it's just, I always say, like, the rules don't apply to flyweight and heavyweight. It's like two different sports, but it's, yeah, he, like, Dominic Cruz was a legend. I'm happy for him. I do think it maybe tainted his legacy a little bit to come back, but not terribly. He still goes down as one of the greats, and I feel for Tatiana. There's a part of me that definitely wanted her to win because, like, she has overcome so much. And it's like, as an injury prone person, I'm like, yes, we can do it. It's possible, but. I agree with you. I wonder if that's just a piece of her game that she just maybe can't help is the constant injuries. But
yeah, and it really is. I don't know. It's like I said, it's such a hard thing because I'm like, is it them or is it something they're doing? Could they be doing more to prevent this, or is it just like, your body just won't hold up for you, which I'm like, in that case, then it's like, I really do feel for you. Like, I really do feel for both of them. Cause like I said, Dom is still a legend, not taking anything away from him, but there is probably something that is like tainted around his career because of so much time out.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah. It's tough to say. There's too many factors. Anyway, Dave deleted my little thing of Patchy's post. I know Gillian wanted to touch on this real quick, so we'll hit this and then we'll get out of here and go about our Sundays. PFL, we have Aaron Pico getting released. The UFC is looking at Aaron Pico. We'll love to see some of those fights with him in the UFC. We have Pitbull getting cut after complaining one time publicly. We've got the champs like Corey Anderson saying they didn't even know Bellator was going under. And here we have Patchy Mix begging the PFL to release him via Instagram post, which makes me wonder how these conversations have been going behind the scenes if he is literally having to appeal to the masses to get PFL to release him. What is happening here?
It seems like that's how everybody is like trying to appeal to them, is on Instagram publicly. So I'm assuming behind closed doors, they're not really answering phone calls or like not negotiating in the right way. Yeah, but I think all I'm saying is from this, I think the UFC is about to get real interesting. I'm like, we're going to see some matchups that we've been waiting to see. I'm like, I would love to see Patchy Mix in the UFC. I would love to see Aaron Pico in the UFC. I'm like, these guys, like I said, we're just going to make more entertaining, interesting fights now. I'm like, I think it's good for the sport that if it all goes to one league.
Yes and no. Because at the same time, like, I think there's already people who are not getting opportunities because the UFC is already too saturated. And now if there's nowhere else to go except the UFC, I think that's bad for MMA. Like, it makes for great matchups. I agree with you. But like, MMA outside the UFC is kind of dying. There's less local shows. There's less regional shows. There's less, B tier shows. It's just I think we need more shows. We need more of that. And I think the UFC can solve it by just making the Contender Series year round. That's all we need.
No, I agree. I think that would be a better fix than to keep like a PFL around. I think that the UFC has to become like the NFL or the NBA, where it is the only place to go. You do have to be at the highest level to make it there. Like, maybe we don't sign every single person off the Contender Series. Like, there has to be some type of, because I feel like we haven't been getting the same quality of fights even because we're signing everybody. So I'm like, make it so you have to deserve to be there. You have to deserve to be in the UFC. We're not just handing out contracts. And I feel like it really should just be like like the NFL. It's the only place to go. It's the highest level. It's the top tier. You have, like, if you want to make it big, you have to make it there.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that makes it more competitive, which is scary. You know, you might lose one fight and get cut, you know, it might be just how it is, which like that happens with the NFL a lot, I believe. Like so many people just don't make it, you know, and that was the 1% of the 1% of the 1%.
Exactly. And then it makes you work for your spot harder. It makes you not want to lose that spot. So it's like, it's just going to raise the level of the sport, I feel like, as a whole, and make it better for fans in general.
I don't hate it. Contender Series year round, make it its own show, keep people on there. And then you don't have to go scour the internet for short notice replacements for guys that aren't ready for the UFC. If you just have a roster of Contender Series guys that you can just pull from whenever you want. Pay them 5 and 5, so they have enough money that they can stay ready to be in the UFC. They don't need have them fight a couple times a year. Like, it's not great money, but it's enough to like keep you going, right? Like,
we got to get Dana on the phone now. You know, we got the plan set up. We already know what's good for them.
Let's go. We should be in charge. Come on, Dana. Let's see, I've been in the game for a long time. Listened to thousands of pre and post fight breakdowns. I can say that. Aw, Christopher. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you. G is here to bring the fire and the UFC level analysis. I'm here to just be a fan. And we are so happy you're here. Thank you, guys.
I'm here to hate on the 115ers.
Jillian's here to bring the fire against Weili Zhang. She ain't shit. All right. Are you watching the Super Bowl today?
I will say that you starting saying that you're wearing a Super Bowl jersey. I was like, oh, the Super Bow's today.
I'm wearing a jersey.
Oh, a jersey.
This is my Team Jesus jersey. It's the only team I care about. But it is the closest thing I have to a football jersey.
Yeah, I had no idea the Super Bowl was today. All I watch is MMA. So my Super Bowl was last night.
That's how it usually goes. The UFC usually delivers a killer card the night before. Chris, don't boost her ego. My head's gonna grow. Anywho, well, and I won't even ask you Chiefs versus Eagles, but you guys tell us in the comments, Chiefs or Eagles today. I have been informed by some Philly friends that the Eagles fans are like the most hated fans in football for some reason. So I'm assuming we're gonna have way more people rooting for the Chiefs. I don't know. I'm from Missouri, so I don't hate it. We might tune in. We might watch the Super Bowl. We'll see. I'm going to go to church and then come home, hang out with my doggos. I'm sure Gillian has something similar planned today with the doggies. Yes. Chill Sunday morning. G is clearly going for the Chiefs with her hair. They do match. You do match the Chiefs. So
it's on purpose.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for tuning in on Sunday. This was a long show. We went for like almost 45 minutes, but you know, we love our fights. We gotta talk about all the fights. So thank you guys. We will see you Tuesday. We've got some fun interviews coming your way this Tuesday. We have Jasmine Jesu-Davicius, and I believe we have Terrence McKinney joining us on Tuesday, and maybe somebody else. Not official, but it'll be a fun show. Are you going to be with us on Tuesday as well?
Yes, I will.
So Jasmine Jesu-Davicius, and Terrence McKinney, we will see you on Tuesday. Thanks, guys.